right, so next up we've got Chris Weiss. Always the funniest guy in the room. Never disappoints. You ready? Wow. Never. That's some high expectations.
Don't start now. You sure you
Always the baldest guy in the room.
Ready? Nice. And go.
So you come seeking the most interesting fact I know, do you? You've come to the proper place. Here's 19 completely random candidates, which kind of fits this particular format.
You said 20.
I know, that's the first interesting fact. Concrete is the most commonly made product in the world. We make more concrete than anything else. Romans used it for their entire time up until 400 AD. Then we forgot how to make it for 1,300 years. But don't think too much about that in an anechoic chamber. At -9 decibels, you can hear your own organs processing. Most people hallucinate after 30 minutes. That is just enough time for you to realize, if you think about it, that Russia is bigger than Pluto. 17 million square kilometers compared to 16.5. What kind of Mickey Mouse non-planet is that? And speaking of measurements, here's one you might not know. Electrons have weight. Not very much, but if you add up all of the weight of the electrons in the internet, it adds up to about 50 grams, 45 of which is porn. They say that the internet makes the whole world smaller, but one thing about the world is that if you shrunk it to the size of a billiard ball, it would actually be smoother than a billiard ball. A billiard ball is allowed to deform about 0.2%. The Earth's largest bump is about 1/3 of that, Everest. Sadly, it's not round, so it wouldn't qualify, but there is one thing it does have: an island on a lake, and an island on a lake on an island. Some of my best friends are from the Philippines, but the truth is I'm not their best friend because everybody knows a girl's best friend is something else, which is? Diamonds. There exists a diamond, well, a chunk of glass-like carbon actually, 20 quadrillion miles away, the size of Jupiter. Imagine 2 months of that guy's salary. But gems are kind of boring, don't you think? Well, not boring, corundum. Two popular ones, ruby and sapphire, are actually the same material. They're both aluminum oxide with different impurities. While you're digging for those out in the dirt, you might find something. The thing you might find? Ants. There are at least 1.5 million ants for every human being on the face of the earth. They'll never let you forget your Uncle Ben. They'll never let you go to Tashi Station to convert some power converters. And speaking of bad acting, this has got to be kind of embarrassing. He didn't even make the finals. Although he did say that he was willing afterwards to give some lessons to some of the slackers in the room. You know, in acting, there is one slacker you're probably all thinking of. Steven Spielberg, who didn't finish his Bachelor of Arts until 2002. Then he tested out of the advanced filmmaking class by submitting Schindler's List. They apparently thought it was okay. Now you can actually read his documents, but you know who document you can't read? Marie Curie's. Not without signing a death waiver. 100 years later, they're still so radioactive that she's still the hottest lady in physics. She had this huge brain. Think about that brain that she had. One thing about the brain, it actually named itself. Water is made out of H2O, and a lot of people know that. But that bond between hydrogen and oxygen is actually a very strong bond. Fish breathe water that's dissolved, or oxygen that's dissolved in water, kind of like carbon dioxide in a kind of Coke. They'll die without it. They can't sit around lazy like this guy. The truth is, he's not lazy either. The General Sherman tree pumps 10,000 cubic meters of water per month up an 87-foot tree. That's a continuous flow of 2 horsepower for over 2,700 years. And think about the critters that live in trees, koala bears, just in case you were considering it. They have 2 penises because the females have 2 vaginas and 2 uteri, and thus can be perpetually pregnant. Sadly, 50 to 90% of them have chlamydia. That's bad odds. But not this bad. There are 52 factorial, or about 8 times 10 to the 67th possible arrangements in a deck of cards. That's almost impossible to replicate in your lifetime. But something, sadly, that isn't impossible to replicate in your lifetime is this: slavery. There are actually There were 9 to 11 million people enslaved during the course of the entire transatlantic slave trade, but there are 27 million people in slavery today. 80% of them are women, 50% of them are children. Last fact. In the end, it's all philosophy. If you start anywhere on Wikipedia and start clicking around, if you don't end up in a dead end, there's a more than 95% chance that you will end on the philosophy page. That's the page named after the love of knowledge, the same thing that brought you here tonight. So thank you for listening.